brief. I am passing out to you the presentation as well as the paper on which the presentation was based. While she's putting it up, I'll give you a little background on me. I worked in the federal government system in the U.S. I went to work for IBM for a while, and my last stint in IBM, I was the IBM business professor to Hampton University. That changed my life. I really like the instant gratification that you get from the students when you see that they get it. I'm an economist, and a lot of times the students just couldn't see what economics was until you could apply it. And that's the difference. Once you've been out there and you see the applications for a lot of the things that we do, the students come alive around that. And so I stayed in the academy. I'm an academic administration. I'm the dean of the School of Business at Medgar College. And I'm also the executive director of the Entrepreneurship and Experiential Learning Lab. I mean, I have been just listening to all the resources that you have all over, and I'm like, oh my gosh. Let me tell you just a little bit about how we got started. It was the vision of our president, President Rudolph Crew. When I sat down 3 years ago, he's been there 4 years, he said, I want to do entrepreneurship, and I want to do global awareness. Well, we had no entrepreneurship faculty, we had no funding, we had nothing.
That's a good start.
That was a good start. And the first year, let me tell you, it was such a tough year because my students in Brooklyn, New York, primarily, we're a predominantly black institution, sort of like a historically black institution, but we came along later. But my students, the first year I was there, 20 of them wanted to go to China. And everybody was like, well, all these white students want to go to China. We had no help, no support. Not a single student could we afford to send. So, you know, we wrote grants after grants after grants, and I still say it's sort of like a miracle because we got so much funding afterwards. I can tell you that we've been to China twice, we've been to Kenya 3 times, we've been to Japan, Thailand, Chile, and, well, I have a couple of students here in Italy. The only reason it's a couple is because we're kind of at the end of all of that funding. And I was like, originally I said we were going to do 8 or 9 of our students, but when it came down to closing out some of the funding, we could only send a few. And we sent 2 males. Now, in the demographics of my institution, is the majority are female, the majority have some Caribbean background, the majority have some entrepreneurship in their families. I mean, from the islands that they come from, they see these lifestyle entrepreneurs. However, at our institution, we have no entrepreneurship class. So everything is co-curricular. Everything was co-curricular so we could get a fast start. I am now trying to hire our first entrepreneurship faculty. I am hoping it goes through. We'll see. Once we get the entrepreneurship faculty, we can then develop the curriculum. When I was at Hampton University, we actually started the first historically black college, major and minor, in entrepreneurship that graduated students. I mean, there are a lot of programs to get started, but some of them just can't graduate because you can't run the classes the size. So we graduated students, but since then there have been a lot of HBCUs with a lot of programs, but in entrepreneurship. But I heard you earlier talk about measurements in terms of how many of them are actually running businesses. That is not tracked. And so our niche in the marketplace that we want to really take is, number one, a lot of our students are interested in social entrepreneurship, so we're kind of focused on social entrepreneurship, but we're also focused on getting them out to do businesses. And part of the reason our president was so focused on entrepreneurship is not because it was a nice thing to do, but many of our students with these inflated grade averages still can't find jobs. And in the City University of New York, which we are part of, we're one of 4 comprehensive colleges, and we're one of the smaller ones at 7,000. In the School of Business, we have about 1,000 students. But when we got this funding, it was for everybody. So how do you give a common language so that everyone understands entrepreneurship? We went to Boston and found a vendor who had a 6-week program, and we told them we don't have 6 weeks. We got 1 week. Take your program, compress it down to 1 week, and we sent everyone through that program, everyone who actually is going to participate. And so before I actually start this particular presentation, it's about the work that we've done in about 18 months. The part of the grant that we got from CUNY was for us to do 2 international conferences. The first one was on social entrepreneurship. The second one was on corporate social responsibility. And the second conference, when our collaborators came together, they said, we don't want to stop working together. We want to continue to write together, to publish together, and to work together. And since June of last year, I think we've published about 3 papers and did about 3 presentations internationally. So this group is going, continues to go on. But I still love to talk about my students. I want to talk about my student before I start this, and I promise you, I can do this in 5 or 10 minutes. I promise you that. I promise you. Just let me talk about
Joanne, we have no doubt.
Just let me talk about Ashley Warmington. Now, everyone thinks that the incubators are the way to go, but I will tell you for my students, I focus on what the student needs and just trying to drive to that. We took 2 of our best and brightest students. One was Ashley Warmington, and the other was Christian Waterman. Christian is an artist, a rapper, and he wanted to take his business and scale it up. He already had a business when he came to us. He wanted it to scale. I'm happy to report that he is right now about on a 5-year tour, and he's just dropped a couple new albums. He got his MBA after our program, and he was an incubator dropout. Same thing with Ashley Warmington, but Ashley's story is really personal. Ashley's story is she was a Brooklyn College graduate, and Brooklyn College is part of the CUNY system as well. She wanted to go pre-med, and so she came to us to do some of the work because she was a psychology major. So Ashley said that she was interested in business, and she went into their incubator, into the CUNY incubator. And as life happens, you know, a lot of the smart students really don't understand failure. And it's devastating. And she had already gotten a degree, and she, for life reasons, had problems in the incubator. I don't even want to go into that. But our position is, wherever they are, we have to meet them. She pivoted. She didn't know she pivoted, but she pivoted, and she came up with a brilliant idea that was related to the Airbnb concept. She went to competition in the CUNY competition, and in the 16-year history of the CUNY competition, no woman had ever won. Our little Ashley in psychology won the competition, and that was last year. But the beauty of it was to see the growth. If you saw her present her financials, she was better than any of my business students. She was. She was better than anyone because she was focused, she was determined, and she had the passion. Is my time up already? Okay, she was focused and she had the passion. So what we look for when we identify our students, we don't look for the GPA, we don't look for the majors. They can come from any majors. We look for, do they have the determination to at least get through the boot camp? And the boot camp was pretty rigorous. So that's my story on my students. So whatever else, you have it already in the presentation. Okay. How do I move this?
Page down. Page.
Oh. Okay, so about the authors, there are 3 authors from 3 different continents. Dr. Jacqueline Kisoto, her area of expertise is fashion marketing. She's at CUNY University. She actually was one of the mentors in the incubator there. We have Dr. Iris Billy. She is the organizational management. She is the business person on our team. We have Robert Acevedo. He's a physicist with PhD students, and he's in Chile. He works out at 2 different universities in Chile. These are the, and Dr. Z is our newest one. When I say intergenerational, he's probably the youngest. Me and Acevedo are in the elder camp. But what I find is the diversity of the group really fueled us on. You know, I can talk a little bit about the places we've been, but really what excited us was the change in our students. I can tell you my students from Brooklyn thought they were going to Nairobi, Kenya to help the Africans learn something. They were humbled because the fintech coding ability of the Kenyan students was phenomenal. And you know what? I didn't have to say a thing. They came back and they said, Dean, we gotta up our game. We are behind the Kenyans. It was a sense of, but what do they see in TV? What do they hear about the culture? What do they know about Africa other than the movies and the other things that they see? I'm impressed. Like, we went to several of the incubators there, and it was just, I mean, the work that they're doing there was just fantastic. Like I said, we've been there 3 times within 18 months. So there are some key considerations that you can look at. I really want you to know that the culture did make a difference. I want to quickly get to the data. We call it entrepreneurship for survival. When we went to Kenya the last time, the first 2 times our guides, and it wasn't one of the university folks, it was special. I mean, it wasn't one of the folks that they have for the tours, it was one of the university folks. They would not go themselves into the ghetto. Native Kenyans would not go into the ghetto. We found a social entrepreneur who had previously himself been orphaned, came up and had, through the process of entrepreneurship, bootstrapped himself. He took us in, and we were able to do 2 case studies on a couple of entrepreneurs there in Nairobi, and basically to take a look at how some folks were just, basically, we were like Peru there. It was like how they were just using entrepreneurship to survive. Okay, I mean, okay, this is another thing that we found, that in general, most of the students in entrepreneurship that we looked at across the 3 areas, they were older students, more mature students, had been out, saw that there wasn't things out there that they wanted to do, and so they wanted to find their own path in entrepreneurship. Gender, this is pretty interesting. On our side, of course, because we have all women, or mostly women in the college, there were women. But in Chile and in Kenya, we found it was mostly men. And there was a reason for that. There is a stigma for the women to be associated as being aggressive or assertive or forward. In fact, when Dr. Casanto talks about it, she said, and even me, I'm not married because, you know, studying and being as forward as we are is not for girls considered good. So you would find that you would, in the incubators, it was all mostly men. In Chile, they had a different reason. These were his PhD students who had gone on to have companies, and at the PhD level physicists, they were mostly men. So it wasn't like you had a whole bunch of women there either, so it was different. Okay, I'm going to skip some of the motivators, but basically it was me and have a personal experience across all 3 of the countries. And demotivators, high demotivators, and I think most people can understand this, was the financial risk and access to finance. But what was surprising is in Kenya, there is also a stigma to failure. So if you've taken the risk and you've gotten it wrong, then in the society, it's a little very, because you've wasted a lot of resources, valuable resources that the country didn't have. Okay, so, in conclusion, what we found was, number one, the joy of working with a group of fellows and scholars who are interested in some of the same things you're interested in, is some of the underserved markets. How can we help them? Their jobs are not there. And for many of them, the jobs are not coming. So how do you help some of them come to self-sufficiency? You would think in Brooklyn, New York, we wouldn't have this problem, but in Brooklyn, New York, there are a lot of other brands. How many of you have heard of Medgar College before we came here today? One, the college, not the man. The man. The man. Yes, Medgar died in the civil rights movement and he was shot. And our whole college is around social justice because the community wanted the college to come. But the point that I'm making is there are a lot of other brands, you've heard a lot of names thrown around, where those students have opportunities that many of our students don't have. And so it is our goal to find a way for our students to have opportunities, even if they have to create the jobs themselves or distinguish themselves as entrepreneurs in a place to show that they are differentiated from the other folks that they compete with. And so there you have it. That is my story, and I think I'm under 20 minutes.
13 minutes.
Oh! I rest my case. Of course, we could be around. I'll be around till the rest of the time. You have the material, both the case and the slides. Anything else I could tell you about what we're doing? I've enjoyed just listening to your programs that advance and the work that you've done. And I'm looking for my next round of funding. That's my job. Okay, any questions?
Well, I'm kind of curious if you, because you're focusing specifically on that, and maybe others of us. One part of, I'm trying to get an idea of how much of the, let's say you have 100 units of entrepreneurial education support resources. How are they allocated to different types of entrepreneurial ventures? So what you're talking about is like, the need-based, the kind of the individual, and that compared to coming up with the next Facebook unicorn, compared to digital high tech, others non-tech centric. Does anyone have any idea about how that maps out? Because also the education thing, I know our university is completely biased towards this high-tech focused thing, and to create a company that might be listed on NASDAQ or something.
Well, we're not biased, obviously. However, the reason that I wanted a couple of the students to come here was so that they can look at businesses that are more tech-oriented. We do have some computer information systems students who are developing applications, but at this point, the way we do it is they do the boot camp. When they come through the boot camp, they have some kind of business idea. Then we also have a Shark Tank, and then we have investors at the Shark Tank. And then we also, after the Shark Tank, we have seed money for all of the businesses that we give to them.
Jump in. So, for example, the Shark Tank. What would be kind of the criteria that the sharks would use to say whether they wanted to take a bite of this or not?
Oh, the sharks don't bite. Well,
in the sense of, how, are they using the same sort of criteria to evaluate potentially hugely different opportunities in ventures, just based on scale, for example? No. Actually, we've done 2 or 3 of them, and the first one was very hard on the students, and then I'm talking about the emotional feelings. Ashley won the first one, but the other 2, I mean, I would tell you about Christian Waterman. He lost, and it was very hard for him because he had been in business a lot longer than Ashley. They have a criteria that we agree on before. It's basically on not necessarily scalability, but can they really do this with the team that they have? Some of them don't like Ashley. I mean, it's hard for them to. We asked her to work with someone else. It was hard for her to work with someone else, but she was able later to hire people. But actually, during the time she was with us, it was hard for her to develop her team. So, there is some criteria, but there was a lot of flexibility between Shark Tank to Shark Tank. And because our goal was to have self-sufficient businesses,
of any kind.
Right, so I think that's a very interesting difference with a
Yes.
lot of, there's so many in here, is it scalable? Can you take
Yes.
over the world with this?
Yes.
Can you-
That's
I'm
one.
wondering how different places, because if you're talking about being an individual entrepreneur, I mean, how many schools have anything in their entrepreneur courses about, being individual entrepreneur?
Right,
And
right.
not wanting to take over the world, not wanting to hire 1,000 people, and not wanting to do this, I mean, but I know we don't have anything like that.
Right, we want more of the scalability for economic development, because that is our whole purpose for the job creation part. But so many of them have issues with being underemployed or unemployed when they come out. Our goal was to provide some kind of opportunity right up front. And the way I see this, the vision is that we do get to those who can do scalable businesses. And a big part of, once they've gone through a lot of the boot camp and the seed and working with their businesses, we took them to study abroad to see startups, a lot of startups all over the world, to see how businesses are run in different parts of the world, in the hopes that they would do some more virtual businesses where they have lower or different kind of cost structures to start up. In terms of our donors, we have a certain responsibility of what we promise the donor. We are within that. Within that, it wasn't scalability. Within that, it was, did they run a business successfully, or did they have skills for entrepreneurial ability such that they could go in and be a part of some other job. So I think that's a step further, but we don't have any credit-bearing courses yet. And so I think once we get faculty, resources, and curriculum and match the both, that we'll be able to develop a product, our students, that can develop scalable businesses. We are very hopeful with the first few that we have, but your point is well taken. That they are not, most of the businesses are not technology businesses. We only have one that is even close to a technology business. So, yes.
I like what you said about entrepreneurship for survival.
Oh, yeah.
Given that these people are unemployed or underemployed, what can they do for themselves that's empowering and financially rewarding?
Yeah, it's one thing for us to look at what unemployment looks like in the U.S., but when you go to a place like Nairobi, Kenya, and see what real, I don't want to say real poverty, but see what no job opportunity looks like, the despair that's on the faces of generations of people.
I've been there.
And then you're like, okay, I got to be able to do something. And that's what my students say. It was like, we have a gift here. We have education, we have a way, we need to do more than we're doing. And it wasn't a personal thing, it was more social with the students who were exposed to it. It's like, we have an obligation because we've been given so much to give back and do so much more. I'd say 50% of the students, no, more than 50, 70% of the students who have gone through this program are interested in social entrepreneurship, and I will say 99% of them that go through the program are retained, meaning they don't drop out of school.
Yeah, there you go.
They're focused.
It inspires them. Yeah.
They're inspired and motivated, and they can relate. Sometimes when the students come in, they get a bunch of theory and they can't relate of how am I going to use this? What is my purpose? What is my mission? What we've been able to do real fast is to give them a sense of what their purpose or their mission could be without telling them what their purpose or mission should be. Well, you can see what my purpose and mission is. I'm transparent.